Greetings from Ohio Stadium, ladies and gentlemen. It is a post-game flagship podcast episode recapping Texas's 14-7 loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. I am Chip Brown of Horns247, joined as always by my esteemed colleague at Horns247, the one and only Eric Henry. Eric, beautiful day here in Columbus, Ohio. Lee Corso said goodbye by putting Brutus, the Buckeye mascot, headgear on, just like he did in 1996 in his very first mascot headgear prediction. And he was right. But how this game played out is probably not what we expected, Eric. The Texas offense really struggled to get any kind of rhythm, especially in the first half. They had a 4th and goal from the 1 that they could not get in, and Ohio State had a 4th and goal from the 1, and they were able to get in. Costly penalties hurt Texas, and the Texas defense was outstanding on 3rd down, holding Ohio State to 3 of 12, holding Ohio State to 2.3 yards per carry and to 200 yards of total offense, Eric. But they didn't get much pressure on the quarterback. Part of that was because Ohio State was backs protecting, and they didn't get any turnovers. And Arch Manning did turn it over once. Eric, for 3+ quarters, it looked like Texas was going to suffer its first shutout since 2015. But then they come back to life, and they had a chance to drive and try to tie this game in the final minutes of action, but it's not enough. Eric, your thoughts on this one?
Chip, it's probably bad etiquette for me to just go ahead and start off by putting up a comment on the board, but I'm going to do so because it pretty much sums up how I feel. Stan's dad says penalties, 3rd down, and red zone. That is how you win and lose. Now, I won't boil it down to just those things, right? Because we know a football game is sum of all parts. There definitely are a multitude of factors that cause a win and loss. However, in this game, as every game tells its own story, penalties, 3rd down, and red zone told the story of this game for me, Chip. There were a couple of disappointments. I will start on the offensive side of the ball. Again, everything was not bad, and it's genuinely how I feel. Steve Sarkisian echoed echoed that sentiment, and I will agree. However, how many times did we hear Steve Sarkisian talk about the pre-snap penalties, right? Well, we saw that early on in this game. Pre-snap penalties take this team out of position. Then you get a holding call, right, on DJ Campbell that thwarts an offensive drive. Those are things that result in punts. In a game, Chip, where you knew offense was going to be a premium, you end up going 3 and out because drives are thwarted by penalties. Then 3rd down. We got the 3rd down numbers right here. Texas went 5 of 14. I'd venture to say that 5 of 14 actually looks better than it really was, and 1 of 5 on 4th down looks better than it was considering the 4th quarter where they got a couple conversions. So that number is going to look a little bit inflated. They were much worse than that in my mind. In the red zone, as Stan's dad, thank you for the comment. Thank you for everyone who's watching on Twitter, on YouTube, Facebook. Appreciate you guys watching, sticking around after the post-game press conference with Steve Sarkisian and players. But you take a look at the red zone numbers here, you go 0-2, right? Steve Sarkisian is someone, he's a prideful guy, Chip, and pass it back to you on this. He's a prideful guy. We heard at SEC Media Days, first question right out of the gate was asked about red zone. Steve got I don't want to say defensive, was a little bit, he pushed back. He said, hey, we got to get better, right? Hopefully you guys are asking about a different question. Chip, he was asked about it on Monday, and he said, you know what? Here's a really cool stat, right? He talked about the stat of Texas performing better in the red zone last year than they did the year prior, but he also noted that they have to do so in key situations. They were not able to do that today. More or less, probably was a difference in this ball game. Not every game comes down to a few things, but the story of this game in my mind were those things, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really weird first half because Arch Manning was clearly struggling. Steve Sarkisian talked about how Ohio State did a really good job of disguising coverage, and they made it difficult for Arch Manning. He was unsettled. He was unsure. He was skipping passes. He was missing passes, open receivers. That part was like wasn't quite expecting that. Texas was running the ball pretty well. But it just, they couldn't mount anything offensively. They come out in the third quarter, and on the first possession, they have a, 6-minute and 40-second drive. Arch Manning goes 4 of 4 passing and has a 15-yard run on 2nd and 13, and they get down into the red zone, and they're trying to run it. They run Arch on 1st and 2nd down. They run CJ Baxter on 3rd down, and then they try to get a quarterback sneak in. Ohio State completely crashed the line. They pushed the offensive line back. I don't even really blame that on Arch Manning. I mean, Ohio State got so much push at the line of scrimmage that they were in his legs, before he could even really get going. That was seemingly crippling, Eric. But Texas, the defense was able to hold. There was an interception that was reversed, and they go down and score. And then, they're in position to score again, and Arch misses Ryan Wingo wide open on a crossing route on 3rd down in the red zone that would have given them a 1st down. It was one of those passes that you're like, what happened there? Because he was open. It was kind of at his knees. And then he missed DeAndre Moore wide open on an in-breaking route on 4th down, and he tried to throw it into the corner of the end zone to Parker Livingstone. Arch just wasn't – he'll get better from here. I believe that because, my gosh, when he got into the 2-minute drill and that drive that went down the field for 6 minutes, 40 seconds, he looked comfortable. Steve Sarkisian said maybe we should have run Arch more in the first half. So, hey, I hate to do this, but hats off to Matt Patricia. I mean, if his, disguised coverages were giving Arch that much trouble, then you tip your hat to Matt Patricia. We know Ohio State has great athletes on defense. I thought Arvell Reese was amazing. He's going to be a big-time player. Eric, I mean, there were a few positives, but I'll put it, back to you before we get to the positives. Your thoughts on Arch, because he was very hard on himself in the post game. He said, I got to play better. I got to get the ball to my playmakers. I need to do better. He took all the blame. Your thoughts on Arch?
Apologies to our friends here at Ohio Stadium. I'm sure I will get an email from Taylor Estes reminding me to find a room that is not still operational to do this show post-game. So apologies there. Chip, to your question about Arch Manning, my thoughts. Yeah, he did take it right on the chin. Said, I have to play better. You expect that from Arch, right? The Arch Manning we've gotten to know over the past few years. You expect accountability. And that's the number one thing as a quarterback, right? You got to take accountability. When looking at the game, I thought Steve Sarkisian hit the nail on the head. Offense was out of rhythm. And let's just call a spade a spade. Chip, how many pressers did we go to during fall camp that we heard Steve Sarkisian say, well, the defense had a really good day today, or the defense maybe got the better of X, Y, and Z, right? Or Arch Manning, when we spoke with him towards the end of preseason camp, he noted himself that he felt it took him a little bit of time to get into rhythm with the offense. I'm going to say this. I'm not just going to call it bad, but more so the real, Chip. You're trying to replace so many faces on offense, so many guys who played a lot of football. I know it didn't always work out in Texas's favor last year. I know it didn't always look pretty, but Chip, you can't overestimate or discount continuity, especially on the offensive side of the ball, especially going into a season opener. I will remind people watching this that even if you look at the 2 seasons I've covered the team prior, their season opener against Rice and Colorado State, they weren't flawless, okay? They just were a much better team than those opponents. And eventually, you get enough at-bats, Chip. You're going to hit a home run. You're going to hit a couple doubles, hit a couple singles, drive some runs in, and they're able to do that. Now, you open the season against Ohio State. Those things, those flaws, for lack of a better phrase, they rear their ugly head. They come to light, right? So that's kind of my overall take on Arch and the offense as a whole. Real quickly, I'll pass it back to you on this. I published my story at the buzzer where I talked about, a quote unquote MVP of the game, an unsung hero, and what needs to improve. Wasn't much of an MVP, right? So there wasn't anyone to give that to. But
other than Jack Bomeister,
Jack Bomeister, who took home the unsung hero, right? But what needs to improve? I felt the offense as a whole, right? Ryan Wingo, uncharacteristically dropped a couple passes, right? Arch, we talked about him being out of rhythm. The offensive line kind of being a little out of rhythm. So that's my overall takeaway is it's early season. You're going to go into non-conference play, hopefully fix those things. And you'll revisit this come SEC play when you have to go to Florida, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, as bad as Texas played offensively, like I said, for 3+ quarters, they had a chance to win this game, at least tie it. And if they had the failed red zone possession where he misses Wingo on 3rd down and throws incomplete to Parker Livingstone. Steve Sarkisian said maybe there was a hold on Ohio State's defensive back who's covering Livingstone there. He needed to watch the film, but they come away empty. And then, they end up scoring a touchdown. The defense holds. I thought one of the sort of hidden plays in this game was the line drive punt that Ryan Niblett either couldn't see, but he allowed it to hit, and it rolled 20 yards to the Texas 15. Ends up being a 55-yard punt, and Texas has to go, the length of the field. It didn't work out, but they had a chance. With everything that happened, the horribly timed penalties. You mentioned the holding on DJ Campbell. 2 plays later, Arch tries to force a deep ball because they were at 1st and 15, and then I think 2nd and 13, and he tries to force a deep ball that he said he never should have thrown, but he was trying to throw it to Ryan Wingo. It gets intercepted. They had the ball at the 50 because the defense had pinned Ohio State, and their punter got it out to the 50, but Texas had starting field position at the 50, and then DJ Campbell gets flagged for the hold on 1st down, and he bear hugged the guy. I mean, it wasn't even a questionable holding penalty. It was just like the penalty. Colin Simmons, they're off the field. It's 3rd down from the Texas 44. Grayson Littleton makes a great pass breakup down the field. They're off the field. And then there's a flag, and it's a personal foul face mask on Colin Simmons. Okay, we're live. We'll finish in 2 minutes. So Colin Simmons makes the big, terrible play on 3rd and 4 that continues a drive to a touchdown. It was like the worst timed penalties that you could have ever imagined, but that's the way it went today. And as well as the defense played, like I said, holding Ohio State 3 of 12 on 3rd down, 2.3 yards per carry in the run game. It wasn't like Julian saying, put up a ton of yards. He just made the plays when he needed to make them to help his team get to 14. And that was enough, Eric. I mean, normally you hold a team to 14, and that's a good day at the office for the defense.
No doubt about it, Chip. Why don't you go ahead and bring us home? Have more to say this week on Wednesday on the Flagship podcast.
Yes. Hey, get over to horns247.com. We'll have all of our post game there. It's already, a couple stories are up. We'll have more. But thanks for tuning in to this episode. I will say Steve Sarkisian said we're going to be a good football team. He said maybe we'll see Ohio State again in the college football playoff. He sounded very confident about this team and all the things being fixable. So we'll follow up on Monday, and we'll talk to you again. Signing off from Columbus for Eric Henry, I'm Chip Brown. We'll see you over at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.